Bedtime stories for adults. If, like me, some of your fondest memories are of being tucked in and hearing a favorite story as you drifted off to sleep, you'll love this channel. Here, you'll find gentle bedtime readings of my own books, narrated by my assistant May, in a soft, soothing voice designed to help you relax. No jarring sound effects, no sudden noises, just calm, feel good stories to ease you into sleep. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, you can also find all of my books available on Amazon. Every now and then, someone would excuse themselves to clean up, and by mid morning, both the bath and the outdoor shower stall had been claimed by one person or another in steady rotation. Steam drifted lazily from the pipes outside, trailing up past the window panes into the cold winter air. I was just refilling Magni's mug when the door swung open and in walked Lola, dripping, glowing, and wearing nothing but a towel around her hair. The rest of her? As free as the morning sky. For half a heartbeat, the entire table froze, spoons midair, mouths open. Then instinct kicked in. "Gentlemen, about face!" I barked, leaping to my feet. Every man in the room obeyed instantly, chairs scraping as we all pivoted toward the stove with military precision. The heat from the fire suddenly felt a whole lot warmer. "Oh, I'm so sorry!" Lola gasped, clutching the towel tighter around her head. "I had no idea everyone was in here. Namichi, do you have a dress I can borrow? Mine's filthy and needs to be washed." I didn't dare turn around, but from the sounds behind me, Nimishi had crossed the room in about 3 steps. There was the rustle of fabric, a sharp grab, and then the sound of a door swinging shut. Mom and Irene just stood there, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, both of them looking like they were deciding whether to scold or laugh. Meanwhile, Lepro, cool as a snowdrift, kept eating. Didn't even blink. Just shoveled in another forkful and chewed like this kind of thing happened every breakfast. A few seconds later, Namishi's voice rang out from behind the closed door, not loud but firm. "You stay in there till I come back for you." She reemerged a moment later, holding a bundle of blue fabric. "Mom, can you let this dress out about 3 inches around the middle? Please?" she said, handing it over. Then, turning to us with that sharp glare only a woman can muster, she added, "Well, boys, did you all get a good look?" There was a heartbeat of silence. Then Magni cleared his throat, set his mug down, and said without a trace of shame, "Burned into my brain, my dear." The room exploded with laughter. Lepro, mouth full of eggs, pointed his fork at Magni, shoulders shaking so hard he nearly spilled his plate. The rest of us slowly turned back to the table, still grinning, trying and failing to look innocent. Irene piped up through her chuckles. "Did any of you notice that my Ernie turned away before Don even said anything?" She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Ernie blushed to the tips of his ears. Mom, ever the proud dwarf woman, turned on my father with a mock glare, a sewing needle already in her fingers. "Aye, and did you get a good eyeful, Johnny?" she teased, poking him lightly in the shoulder. Dad jumped a little, then grinned that same boyish grin I'd seen all my life. "Oh, sweet Beth, these old eyes," he began, and before she could jab him again, he swept her up onto his lap. She gave a surprised squeak, but didn't fight it, the half-mended dress still in her hands. Dad looked around the table, his smile wide and mischievous. "Would you all like to hear the tale of how this beautiful creature won my heart?" "Aye!" came the roar from around the table. He laughed, held Mom a little tighter as she tried to thread her needle, and cleared his throat to begin. Dad shifted in his chair, still holding Mom comfortably on his lap as the laughter faded to quiet anticipation. He took a long breath, eyes soft with memory. "Now let's see," he began, his voice rolling with that storyteller's ease. "Magni, Yorda was chancellor then, not yet king, right?" Magni nodded, already smiling. "Right," Dad said. "So you had invited me back to your place for summer break from the academy, and we had a ripper of a night, a poor human cadet trying to keep up, mug for mug, with dwarves. Having never met one in person before, Magni here was my first friend at the academy. A Goodwill Ambassador student, they called him." He chuckled and took a sip of ale before continuing. "Anyway, I woke, or more like stumbled to my feet, around 4:30 in the morning and figured a run would clear my head. So off I went, barefoot, shirtless, in nothing but a pair of buckskin pants, thinking the cold mountain air might wake me quicker. By my third lap around your family ranch, Magni, I was sweating buckets and stopped for a few calisthenics in front of a low field of hay. After about 100 toe touches, I popped up, and there she was. He paused, glancing at Mom, whose cheeks were already glowing. She was out in the field with a basket, picking something or other. She stood and stretched, and the morning sun was right behind her, shining straight through that thin cotton dress. He let out a soft sigh. I fell in love with that silhouette right then and there. The table was silent now, every eye fixed on him. The firelight flickered, painting gold across the walls. Just then, he went on, Magni here came stumbling up beside me, ale still in his hand, and without looking away, I said, "What did I say to you, Magni?" Magni chuckled, setting his mug down and clearing his throat. "You said, 'Come hell or high water, I'm going to marry that beautiful creature.'" The table roared with laughter. Magni grinned wider, eyes twinkling. Then I said, "What beautiful creature? That's just me, cousin." Mom swatted Magni's arm playfully, laughing as the others joined in. Dad raised a hand, chuckling. "So before I even knew her name, I marched straight up to your Grandpa Hammersmith, General Hammersmith himself, snapped to attention, and saluted. 'Sir,' I said, 'I'm going to marry your daughter.'" The table went quiet again, everyone hanging on the story. Dad straightened a little, slipping easily into the memory. He put down his mug, circled around me, looking me up and down like I was a new recruit who'd lost his mind. Then he stood in front of me, squinting, and said, "Which one?" The room burst into another wave of laughter. "I stood taller," Dad continued, smiling at the memory. "I don't know her name yet, sir," I said. Then I saluted again. He saluted back, then called his daughters over. All 5 of them came running, lined up shoulder to shoulder, and he announced, "This very brave, very stupid human cadet wants to marry one of ye. Who'll it be?" Dad's eyes softened. And your mother took one step forward. Mom, still sitting in his lap, joined in softly, her accent thickening with the memory. I said. I saw him this morning in the field, all sweaty and manly, and I had to grab his attention." "Enough," Dad barked in his best imitation of General Hammersmith, making everyone laugh again. "Then he looked at me," Dad continued, "and said, 'She be dwarf, lad. Ye be human. You'll have haters on both sides.'" Dad's tone grew quiet then, steady and sure. And I said, "Sir, as long as she's beside me for the next 100 years, I'll fight and die for her, sir." A hush fell over the room. Even Magni's eyes glistened in the firelight. Dad smiled faintly. He let out a long, tired breath and said, "Well, ask her." Then he grabbed my arm and said, "Her name Bethanne." He turned to look at Mom, and for a moment it was as if time itself bent around them, carrying everyone else back to that morning in the hayfield. "I marched to your mother," he said softly, got down on one knee, grabbed her hands, and said, "Sweet Beth, I will love you, honor you, and stand beside you come hell or high water. You'll always be the love of my life, whether you say yes or not. But will you marry me?" Mom took a deep breath, finishing the story herself now, her voice trembling with laughter and pride. "I no cared that Mida was there," she said, "and a whole room full of dwarves as well. I looked into me soldier boy Johnny's face, smiled, and said yes. Then I kissed him hard on the lips." A cheer went up around the table. Magni clapped, Lepro whistled, and Namishi wiped a tear from her cheek, smiling wide. Mom giggled softly and handed the finished dress to Namishi. "Here's your dress, dear," she said, patting her hand gently. The fire crackled. The air felt soft with warmth and memory. And then Lola, crying, appeared from the hallway doorway, her bare shoulder and head sticking out just enough to see us. "That was beautiful," she sniffled. Without missing a beat, Namishi threw the dress at her, and we all shouted in unison, "Go get dressed!" Author's note. I would love to tell you that this was the story of how my parents met, but alas, life didn't grant me that particular fairy tale. Instead, what follows is inspired by another love story in my family, one that has always stayed with me. The tale of my great-uncle George and his beloved Laura. It was the classic World War II romance. Boy joins the army, boy meets the base commander's daughter, boy promptly turns the commander's life into a nightmare. Uncle George was relentless in his pursuit, finding the most harebrained excuses to wander near the commander's home, all in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the girl with the quiet smile and the soft voice. He nearly got himself killed more than once, but he always came back grinning, a fresh bruise on his ribs and Laura's laughter echoing in his head. When the war finally loosened its grip and Uncle George completed his tour, they wasted no time. They married and settled on a little farm in Stittsville, Ontario, where they lived out the rest of their days, side by side, sunrise to sunset. Great Uncle George later took my father under his wing and taught him what it meant to be a man, how to work hard, speak straight, and love for a lifetime. I grew up on that same farm, spending weekends exploring dusty barns, dodging trouble, and listening to stories told around old oak tables. Even in their 80s, Uncle George would tug Great Aunt Laura down into his lap as if she were still that young commander's daughter, and they would talk over each other, laughing, interrupting, teasing, as country folk do. Their hands were wrinkled, their voices soft, but their love, untamed as ever. They showed me that great romances don't end when the war is over or when youth fades. The best ones endure, stubbornly, joyfully, for a whole lifetime. Bedtime stories for adults. If, like me, some of your fondest memories are of being tucked in and hearing a favorite story as you drifted off to sleep, you'll love this channel. Here, you'll find gentle bedtime readings of my own books, narrated by my assistant May, in a soft, soothing voice designed to help you relax. No jarring sound effects, no sudden noises, just calm, feel-good stories to ease you into sleep. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, you can also find all of my books available on Amazon.